Imagine yourself standing at the edge of the known world, not gazing upward at the stars that have captivated humanity since our ancestors first looked toward the heavens, but preparing to descend into a realm that remains more mysterious, more alien, and more unexplored than the surface of the moon or the rusty plains of Mars. As you settle into deep comfort, allowing the accumulated tensions and concerns of your day to dissolve like salt crystals in an infinite sea, picture yourself beginning a journey downward through layers of blue that transform with such subtle gradation that you might not notice the change until you look back at where you began. The bright, cheerful azure of tropical shallows, where sunlight dances through the water in cascading curtains of gold and silver, gives way imperceptibly to the deeper sapphire of the open ocean, where the light begins to lose its strength, its warmth, its ability to illuminate. Further still, we enter the twilight zone, that realm of perpetual dusk where the last photons of sunlight struggle and fail, creating a world painted in shades of indigo and violet that no human eyes have evolved to properly perceive. This journey we are undertaking together tonight is not merely a descent through water. Though water will be our medium, our pathway, our constant companion, it is a passage through time itself, through layers of history that stretch back millions and billions of years, through pressures that transform the very nature of matter, bending the rules of chemistry and physics that we take for granted on the surface. We are entering a world that covers more than 70% of our planet's surface, more than all the continents combined, yet remains less explored, less understood, less mapped than the moon that orbits overhead, pulling the very waters we're about to explore in its ancient gravitational dance. The ocean floor, that vast and hidden landscape that stretches beneath miles of water, beneath pressures that would crush a human body in milliseconds, beneath temperatures that hover just above freezing, is not the flat, lifeless desert that early oceanographers imagined when they first began to ponder what might lie beneath the waves. Instead, it is a world of such overwhelming complexity, such startling beauty, such profound mystery, that each expedition to explore it, each robot submarine that descends into its depths, each sample of sediment drawn from its surface, returns with discoveries that challenge our fundamental understanding of life, of geology, of chemistry, of time itself, and of the very nature of our planet. Consider for a moment the sheer scale of what we're discussing. The ocean floor encompasses mountain ranges that stretch for 40,000 miles, circling the globe like the seams on a baseball. Their peaks and valleys never touched by rain or wind, never eroded by the forces that shape the mountains we know, sculpted instead by forces that operate on time scales that make all of human history seem like the briefest flicker of a candle in a vast cathedral. These underwater mountains rise from depths that could swallow Mount Everest with thousands of feet to spare, their slopes home to ecosystems that have evolved in isolation for millions of years, developing solutions to the problems of existence that would seem like magic to a surface dweller. As we begin our descent through the water column, that vast three-dimensional space that separates the familiar surface from the alien world below, we might pause to consider how recently humanity has begun to understand what lies beneath. For most of our species' existence, spanning hundreds of thousands of years of evolution, migration, and cultural development, the ocean floor remained as inaccessible as the surface of another planet, as mysterious as the far side of the moon, as unknown as the interior of a black hole. Ancient mariners, those brave souls who ventured out of sight of land, guided only by the stars and their understanding of wind and current, told stories of the deeps that mixed careful observation with wild imagination, speaking of great beasts that could swallow ships whole, their tentacles as thick as tree trunks, their eyes like burning coals in the darkness. They spoke of whirlpools that led to the underworld, vast spirals of water that could drag a ship down to the realm of the dead. They imagined places where the ocean simply ended, falling away into an infinite void, or where it continued downward forever, connecting to underground seas that mirrored the world above. Some cultures believed the ocean floor was the realm of the dead, where the spirits of drowned sailors walked on the bottom, their feet stirring up the mud that made the water murky near the shore. Others thought it was the domain of gods and dragons, beings of such power that they could create storms with their breathing, earthquakes with their movements, tsunamis with their anger. They were not entirely wrong in sensing something profound and otherworldly about the ocean depths. What lies beneath the waves does indeed belong to another realm, one where the rules that govern life on the surface bend and break and reform into new configurations that challenge our understanding of what is possible. The pressure alone, increasing by 1 atmosphere for every 33 feet of depth, creates conditions that would crush most surface life in an instant. Compressing gases, changing the behavior of chemicals, altering the very nature of biological processes. At the bottom of the deepest trenches, the pressure exceeds 1,000 atmospheres, equivalent to having the weight of 50 jumbo jets pressing down on every square inch. Or like being at the bottom of a column of rock nearly 3 miles high. Yet life not only exists under these crushing pressures, but thrives, having evolved solutions to problems that human engineers are only beginning to understand. Fish swim through water that would compress a human body to the size of a marble. Bacteria metabolize chemicals in ways that would be impossible at surface pressures. Proteins maintain their structure under forces that should denature them instantly. The adaptations that allow life to exist at these pressures involve modifications at the molecular level, changes in the fundamental chemistry of life that we are only beginning to comprehend. The temperature, too, transforms as we descend through the layers of the ocean. The warm surface waters, heated by the sun and stirred by the winds, mixed by waves and currents, give way to a sharp boundary called the thermocline, where temperature drops precipitously, sometimes by dozens of degrees, in just a few feet. Below this thermal barrier, in what oceanographers call the deep ocean, temperatures hover just above freezing, maintained at this knife-edge point by the salt content that depresses the freezing point and the pressure that further modifies the behavior of water. This cold is not the sharp, biting cold of a winter wind that stings exposed skin and makes breath visible in the air. It is something more profound, more ancient, more patient. A cold that has existed since before the continents took their current positions. A cold that remembers the ice ages and the warm periods, that has remained stable while entire species evolved and went extinct in the world above, while civilizations rose and fell, while the stars themselves moved in their courses. The darkness that engulfs us as we continue our descent is equally profound, equally transformative. Sunlight, that fundamental force that drives most life on Earth's surface, that powers photosynthesis, that sets circadian rhythms, that allows vision, penetrates only the uppermost few hundred feet of the ocean. By 600 feet down, only 1% of surface light remains. By 1,000 feet, even the faintest trace of sunlight has vanished, leaving a darkness more complete than any moonless night, more absolute than the deepest cave, more profound than the darkness between stars. This is not a temporary darkness waiting for dawn, not a seasonal darkness waiting for spring. It is an eternal night that has persisted for billions of years, broken only by the brief flashes of bioluminescence from passing creatures. In certain special places that we will explore, the glow of volcanic heat from the Earth's interior. Yet this darkness has not prevented life from flourishing. Instead, It has driven evolution in directions that surface dwellers might never have imagined, creating solutions to the problem of perception that seem like science fiction. In the absence of sunlight, organisms have evolved other ways of perceiving their environment, other senses that we can barely imagine. Some detect the faintest electrical fields generated by the muscle contractions of their prey, sensing the bioelectric aura that surrounds every living thing. Others sense pressure waves in the water, with organs so sensitive they can detect the wake of a fish that passed by minutes or even hours earlier, reading the history of movement written in the water itself. Still others create their own light through bioluminescence, using chemical reactions to produce cold light in colors ranging from blue-green to deep red, creating living constellations in the darkness, messages written in photons that we are only beginning to decode. The chemistry of bioluminescence itself is a marvel that we still don't fully understand. The basic reaction involves a compound called luciferin reacting with oxygen in the presence of an enzyme called luciferase. But the details vary enormously among species. Some organisms produce continuous light. Others flash in patterns. Still others release glowing clouds of chemicals into the water. The purposes are equally varied: attracting prey, deterring predators, communicating with potential mates, or simply illuminating the darkness to see what's there. Some deep-sea fish have evolved photophores, specialized light-producing organs, arranged in patterns as specific as fingerprints, allowing individuals to recognize members of their own species in the darkness. As we approach the ocean floor itself, that boundary between the liquid ocean and the solid earth, between the hydrosphere and the lithosphere, we encounter a landscape that defies easy description or simple categorization. This is not a single environment, but a mosaic of different worlds, each with its own characteristics, its own communities of organisms, its own mysteries waiting to be discovered, its own stories written in rock and sediment, and the bodies of creatures adapted to conditions we can barely imagine. The continental shelves, those shallow platforms that extend from the coastlines like underwater terraces, give way to continental slopes that plunge into the abyss at angles that would be considered steep on land, but seem almost vertical in the context of the ocean. These slopes, far from being smooth inclines, are cut by enormous submarine canyons that dwarf their terrestrial counterparts. These canyons have been carved by turbidity currents, underwater avalanches of sediment-laden water that race down the slopes at speeds that can exceed 40 miles per hour, carrying millions of tons of material from the continental margins to the deep ocean floor. The Monterey Canyon off the coast of California rivals the Grand Canyon in size, yet it remains largely unexplored, its depths hiding species unknown to science. Geological features we've never seen, possibly entire ecosystems adapted to the unique conditions within its walls. The Congo Canyon extends from the mouth of the Congo River far out into the Atlantic Ocean, carrying sediments from the heart of Africa to the deep ocean floor, creating an underwater river of mud that flows for hundreds of miles. These submarine canyons serve as highways for nutrients, carrying organic matter from the productive coastal waters to the food-poor depths, supporting communities of organisms adapted to intercept this bounty as it passes. They also serve as refugees for deep-water species, providing vertical walls where filter feeders can attach themselves to intercept the currents, caves, and overhangs where fish can shelter, and a variety of depths and conditions that support remarkable biodiversity. Some canyons host cold-water coral reefs that rival tropical reefs in their beauty and complexity, though they grow in complete darkness and near freezing temperatures. Beyond the continental slopes, we encounter the abyssal plains, vast expanses of seafloor that represent some of the flattest places on Earth. Flatter than any desert, any prairie, any frozen lake surface. These plains, covering more than half of the ocean floor, stretch for thousands of miles with elevation changes of only a few feet. They are not the barren wastelands they might appear to be on first glance, however. Beneath their smooth surface of sediment lies a complex landscape of buried hills and valleys, the remnants of ancient volcanic activity and tectonic movements that have been gradually buried by the slow rain of particles from above. The sediment itself, accumulated over millions of years at rates sometimes measured in millimeters per millennium, contains the history of our planet written in microscopic detail. Like a book where each page represents thousands of years, each layer tells a story. Stories of climate change, of volcanic eruptions, of asteroid impacts, of the evolution and extinction of species, of changes in ocean chemistry, of the movement of continents. The white oozes made from the shells of countless microscopic organisms record changes in ocean chemistry and temperature, with a precision that allows scientists to reconstruct ancient climates. Layers of volcanic ash, carried by winds for thousands of miles before settling to the ocean floor, mark ancient eruptions that might have changed global climate, triggering ice ages or periods of warming. Thin layers enriched in iridium and other rare elements speak of asteroid impacts that ended geological eras, wiping out entire branches of the tree of life while creating opportunities for new forms to evolve. Bands of different magnetic orientation record the reversals of Earth's magnetic field, events that remain poorly understood despite decades of study. Events that might have exposed Earth's surface to increased cosmic radiation, possibly triggering mutations and evolutionary changes. To read these sediments is to read Earth's autobiography, written in a language we are only beginning to decipher. Each core sample a chapter in a story that spans billions of years. The sediment accumulates with almost incomprehensible slowness, sometimes at rates of less than an inch per 1,000 years, slower than the growth of human fingernails, slower than the erosion of mountains, slower than almost any process we can observe on human timescales. A footprint left on the abyssal plain might remain visible for decades or even centuries, slowly filling with the gentle rain of particles from above. A piece of wood that sinks to the bottom might take thousands of years to decay completely. The carcass of a whale might support a community of specialized organisms for a century or more, its bones releasing nutrients for decades after the soft tissue has been consumed. This marine snow, as scientists poetically call it, consists of the remains of plankton that lived in the sunlit waters above, fecal pellets from creatures throughout the water column, dust blown from continents thousands of miles away, volcanic ash from eruptions, cosmic dust from space, and organic aggregates formed by the combination of dissolved organic matter. It falls continuously through the darkness, like snow in an eternal winter that never ends, never changes, yet somehow supports a sparse but persistent community of life that has adapted to extract nutrients from this meager resource. The organisms that inhabit the abyssal plains have adapted to an existence that would seem impossible to surface dwellers, developing strategies for survival that push the boundaries of what we consider life. Food is scarce, arriving in the form of dead organisms that sink from the productive waters above, a journey that might take weeks for small particles, days for larger carcasses. A dead whale, falling to the abyssal floor after a journey through miles of water column, becomes an oasis of nutrients that can support a community of specialized organisms for decades, going through distinct successional stages as different organisms exploit different resources. First come the hagfish and sleeper sharks, primitive creatures that can detect the scent of decay from miles away, removing the soft tissue with remarkable efficiency. These mobile scavengers can consume enormous quantities of flesh, their bodies capable of expanding to accommodate meals that might not come again for months or years. Then polychaete worms and other organisms that can digest bone move in, some carrying bacteria that can break down the complex fats within the bones, extracting nutrients that other organisms cannot access. Specialized bacteria form mats on the bones, processing sulfides produced by anaerobic decay. Finally, bacteria complete the decomposition, processing the last organic compounds and releasing nutrients back into the water, completing a cycle that might take a century or more. Between these rare bonanzas, the inhabitants of the abyssal plains must survive on the meager resources available in the sediment and the occasional small carcass or piece of organic matter that reaches the bottom. Sea pigs, a type of sea cucumber that looks nothing like their shallow water relatives, march across the sediment in herds that can number in the hundreds, processing the mud for the small amount of organic matter it contains, leaving behind trails of processed sediment like aquatic earthworms. Their gatherings, captured on deep-sea cameras, represent one of the few examples of social behavior in the abyss, though the purpose of these aggregations remains mysterious. Tripod fish, with their elongated fins modified into stilts, stand on the bottom facing into the current and waiting for small prey to drift by, conserving energy by remaining motionless for hours or days at a time. When prey is detected, they can strike with surprising speed, but most of their existence is spent in patient waiting. Glass sponges, their skeletons made of intricate lattices of silicon dioxide that would be impossible to manufacture with human technology, filter the water for bacteria and organic particles, processing thousands of gallons of water to extract enough nutrients to grow perhaps a fraction of an inch per year. These organisms have metabolisms so slow that they seem to exist in a different time frame from surface life, growing and reproducing with a patience that spans decades or centuries. Some deep-sea clams have been aged at over 500 years old, making them among the oldest known animals on Earth. They add growth rings to their shells like trees, but so slowly that a human lifetime might be recorded in a millimeter of shell. Their longevity raises questions about aging and senescence that challenge our understanding of these fundamental biological processes. Rising from these plains like islands from the sea are the seamounts, underwater mountains that never break the surface, though some come close enough to affect surface waves and currents. There are estimated to be over 100,000 seamounts in the world's oceans, yet fewer than 1% have been explored in any detail. These mountains, most of them extinct volcanoes that once spewed lava onto the ocean floor, create upwellings of nutrient-rich water as deep currents are forced up their slopes, supporting communities of filter feeders that carpet their slopes in living gardens. Deep sea corals, some individuals thousands of years old, form forests on the seamount slopes, their branches providing three-dimensional structure in an otherwise two-dimensional world. These corals, growing without the benefit of symbiotic algae that power their shallow water cousins, must capture all their food from the water column, extending polyps to trap passing plankton and organic particles. A single coral colony might be older than the Roman Empire, having started growing when humans were still learning to work iron, continuing through the rise and fall of civilizations, unchanged and unaware of the drama playing out in the world above. The seamounts serve as stepping stones for deep-sea organisms, allowing species to spread across ocean basins by island hopping across the abyss. They also create barriers to deep ocean currents, forcing water upward and creating complex current patterns that influence ocean circulation on a global scale. Some seamounts are so tall that they create their own weather systems in the deep ocean, with clouds of marine snow swirling around their peaks, currents accelerating through gaps and valleys, and distinct communities of organisms at different depths on their slopes. The biodiversity of seamounts rivals that of tropical rainforests, with high levels of endemism, species found nowhere else on Earth. Each seamount, isolated by miles of abyssal plain, becomes an evolutionary laboratory where species adapt to local conditions, diverging from their ancestors on other seamounts. Some scientists estimate that seamounts might host millions of undiscovered species, making them one of the last frontiers for biological discovery on Earth. But perhaps the most dramatic features of the ocean floor are the mid-ocean ridges. Those vast mountain ranges where new ocean floor is born from the Earth's interior. Stretching for more than 40,000 miles around the globe, these ridges mark the boundaries where tectonic plates pull apart, allowing magma from Earth's mantle to well up and create new crust. The ridges are not continuous, but are broken and offset by transform faults, creating a complex geometry that reflects the spherical nature of Earth and the complicated forces that drive plate tectonics. The process of seafloor spreading at these ridges is one of the fundamental processes shaping our planet. As the plates pull apart, magma rises from the mantle, cooling and solidifying to form new ocean floor. This process has been operating for billions of years, constantly renewing the ocean floor while destroying old seafloor at subduction zones where plates converge. The entire ocean floor is thus recycled on timescales of about 200 million years, meaning that no ocean floor older than this exists on Earth, despite the oceans themselves being billions of years old. Along the axes of these ridges, we find some of the most remarkable environments on our planet. Hydrothermal vents, where seawater that is percolated down through cracks in the ocean floor is heated by magma and erupts back into the ocean, carrying dissolved minerals from the Earth's interior. The discovery of these vents in 1977 near the Galapagos Islands revolutionized our understanding of life on Earth and possibly beyond. The water emerging from these vents can reach temperatures exceeding 700 degrees Fahrenheit, hot enough to melt lead, yet it doesn't boil because of the immense pressure. When this superheated water meets the near-freezing ocean water, the minerals precipitate out instantly, creating plumes that look like smoke and building elaborate structures that grow like Gothic cathedrals on the ocean floor. These structures, called chimneys or smokers depending on their appearance and the minerals they emit, can grow remarkably quickly by geological standards, sometimes adding several feet in a year. Black smokers emit dark clouds of iron and sulfur compounds, creating plumes that can rise hundreds of feet into the water column before dispersing. White smokers release lighter-colored plumes rich in calcium and silicon, often at lower temperatures that allow more complex communities to establish themselves nearby. The structures themselves become home to some of the most remarkable organisms on Earth. Creatures that have evolved to exploit the chemical energy available at the vents, creating ecosystems that operate on fundamentally different principles from those on the surface. Giant tube worms, some growing to 8 feet in length and as thick as a human arm, have no mouth, no gut, no digestive system at all. They have evolved one of the most remarkable symbioses in nature, harboring billions of chemosynthetic bacteria in a specialized organ called a trophosome that can make up half their body weight. The worms provide the bacteria with hydrogen sulfide absorbed from the vent water through their bright red plumes, red from hemoglobin that binds hydrogen sulfide as well as oxygen and oxygen from the seawater. The bacteria use these chemicals to produce organic compounds through chemosynthesis, a process analogous to photosynthesis, but using chemical energy instead of light energy. This partnership represents a completely different basis for life than the photosynthesis that dominates the surface world. A second genesis of primary production that suggests life might exist in places we never imagined possible. The growth rate of these tube worms is extraordinary for deep-sea organisms, adding up to a meter of length in less than 2 years, faster than any other deep-sea invertebrate. Yet their lives are precarious, dependent entirely on the continued flow of chemicals from the vents. When a vent dies, which can happen suddenly if underground plumbing shifts, the entire community faces catastrophe. The tube worms, cemented in place and unable to move, die within days or weeks. Mobile organisms must find new vents or perish. The sea floor around dead vents is littered with the empty tubes of worms and the shells of other organisms, testament to communities that once thrived. The communities around hydrothermal vents include creatures that seem to belong to an alien world, evolved to exploit every possible niche in these extreme environments. Vent crabs, their bodies adapted to tolerate temperatures that would cook ordinary crustaceans, scuttle across the hot surfaces, somehow sensing the invisible boundaries between water that would kill them instantly and water merely warm enough to survive. They feed on bacteria and smaller invertebrates, and possibly directly on the chemicals from the vents, though their exact diet remains poorly understood. Vent fish, pale and often blind, navigate the turbulent waters around the vents using lateral line systems that detect pressure waves and possibly other senses we don't understand. Some species have evolved reduced or absent swim bladders, allowing them to hover near the vents without being pushed upward by the rising hot water. Their bodies contain specialized proteins that remain stable at temperatures that would denature ordinary proteins, representing biotechnological marvels that scientists are studying for potential applications. Polychaete worms form dense colonies on vent chimneys, their bodies covered in bacteria that they cultivate like gardens. Some species can tolerate temperatures up to 80 degrees Celsius, 176 degrees Fahrenheit, among the highest temperature tolerances known for any animal. They wave their tentacles in the vent fluids, possibly feeding on bacteria or absorbing chemicals directly. When disturbed, some species can release bioluminescent clouds, creating brief auroras of light in the darkness. Vent shrimp, swarming in numbers that can reach thousands per square meter, have evolved unique sensory organs that might detect the infrared radiation emitted by the hot vent water. These organs, derived from modified eyes, cannot form images, but might allow the shrimp to navigate the thermal gradients around vents, finding the sweet spot where temperature and chemical conditions are optimal. The shrimp carry gardens of bacteria on their bodies and in their gill chambers, farming their own food in a relationship that blurs the line between organism and ecosystem. The vents themselves are ephemeral features on geological timescales, though they seem permanent from a human perspective. An individual vent might remain active for only a few decades or centuries before the underground plumbing that feeds it becomes blocked or shifts to a new location. Entire vent fields can shut down and restart as magma chambers beneath them cool and reheat. When a vent dies, its specialized community faces catastrophe. The organisms must find new vents or perish, yet new vents might be dozens or hundreds of miles away across barren seafloor. How vent organisms accomplish this feat of navigation across miles of barren seafloor remains one of the great mysteries of the deep ocean. Larvae of vent organisms must somehow locate suitable habitat in the vast darkness of the deep sea. Some scientists speculate that the larvae can detect chemical plumes from active vents carried by deep ocean currents, following gradients of hydrogen sulfide or methane like salmon, following the scent of their home streams. Others suggest that they might follow the low-frequency sounds generated by the turbulent mixing of hot and cold water, using the vent's acoustic signatures as beacons in the darkness. Still others propose that they might sense the weak electrical fields generated by the chemical reactions at the vents, or even detect the infrared radiation from hot water. Recent research has revealed that vent larvae might drift for months in the water column, potentially traveling hundreds of miles before settling. Some species produce larvae that can delay metamorphosis until they detect suitable habitat, extending their dispersal phase if necessary. This strategy increases the chances of finding a new vent, but also increases mortality. As the longer larvae drift, the more likely they are to be eaten or to exhaust their energy reserves. The discovery of hydrothermal vents revolutionized our understanding of life on Earth in ways that continue to ripple through science. Before 1977, scientists believed that all life ultimately depended on energy from the sun, that photosynthesis was the foundation of all ecosystems. The discovery of entire ecosystems thriving in complete darkness, powered by chemical energy from the Earth's interior, suggested that life might be far more versatile and resilient than previously imagined. It opened up new possibilities for the origin of life, suggesting that life might have begun not in warm surface pools, but in the chemical gardens of ancient hydrothermal vents. This discovery has profound implications for the search for life elsewhere in the universe. If life can exist around hydrothermal vents on Earth, might it not also exist in the subsurface oceans of Jupiter's moon Europa or Saturn's moon Enceladus, where tidal heating might drive similar hydrothermal activity? The discovery that life on Earth is not necessarily dependent on sunlight expands the habitable zone throughout the cosmos, suggesting that life might exist in places we never considered possible. In the subsurface oceans of ice-covered moons, in the atmospheres of gas giants, in the hydrocarbon lakes of Titan, or in environments we haven't yet imagined. Moving away from the drama of the hot vents, we encounter features that are equally remarkable but far more subtle. Cold seeps, places where fluids rich in methane and hydrogen sulfide leak slowly from the seafloor. Unlike the hot, violent eruptions of hydrothermal vents, cold seeps release their chemicals slowly and at temperatures close to that of the surrounding seawater. These seeps can remain active for thousands or even tens of thousands of years, far longer than individual hydrothermal vents, supporting communities of organisms that grow with ancient patience. The discovery of cold seeps revealed another way that chemical energy from Earth's interior could support life in the deep sea. The methane and hydrogen sulfide that seep from these sites come from the decomposition of organic matter buried in sediments, from the thermal breakdown of organic molecules deep in the Earth, or from serpentinization reactions between seawater and certain types of rock. These chemicals provide energy for chemosynthetic bacteria, which in turn support complex communities of organisms. The communities at cold seeps include some of the longest-lived animals on Earth, their longevity a testament to the stability of these environments. Tube worms at cold seeps grow much more slowly than their vent cousins, adding perhaps an inch per year, but they can live for centuries. Some specimens have been estimated to be over 600 years old, meaning they were young when the Black Death swept through Europe, when the Aztec Empire was at its height, when the Ming Dynasty ruled China. These organisms have lived through the entire modern period of human history, growing slowly in the darkness while empires rose and fell above them. Clams at cold seeps have been aged at over 400 years, making them among the oldest known animals. These clams, some growing to over a foot in length, have evolved remarkable adaptations to their chemical-rich environment. They harbor chemosynthetic bacteria in their gills, providing them with nutrients in exchange for a safe habitat. Their shells, growing slowly over centuries, record changes in ocean chemistry and seep activity in their growth rings, like trees recording ancient climates. Scientists studying these shells can reconstruct the history of seep environments over millennia, reading stories of changing chemical flux, temperature variations, and community succession. Cold seeps often feature another remarkable phenomenon: gas hydrates, ice-like structures where methane molecules are trapped within cages of water molecules. These hydrates form under the specific pressure and temperature conditions found on the deep sea floor, creating deposits that look like dirty ice but burn if brought to the surface and ignited. The formation of gas hydrates requires a delicate balance of temperature, pressure, and gas concentration. Too warm, and they dissociate. Too cold, and they don't form. Too little pressure, and the methane escapes as gas. Vast deposits of gas hydrates exist beneath the ocean floor, containing more carbon than all the world's oil, gas, and coal reserves combined. These deposits represent an enormous potential energy source, but also a potential climate hazard. If ocean temperatures warm sufficiently, these hydrates could destabilize, releasing enormous quantities of methane, a potent greenhouse gas, into the ocean and potentially the atmosphere. Some scientists believe that massive releases of methane from hydrates might have triggered past climate changes, including the Paleocene-Eocene thermal maximum 56 million years ago, when global temperatures rose by 5 to 8 degrees Celsius in just a few thousand years. Occasionally, these deposits do destabilize on a smaller scale, creating one of the most spectacular phenomena of the deep sea. Plumes of methane bubbles rise from the seafloor, creating what looks like underwater fountains or geysers. These bubble plumes can be detected from the surface using sonar, appearing as vertical columns in the water. As the bubbles rise, they dissolve into the seawater, or, if the plume is large enough, some might reach the surface and enter the atmosphere. Marine organisms have learned to exploit these bubble plumes, with some fish congregating around them, possibly using them as navigational landmarks or feeding on organisms attracted to the methane. Perhaps even more mysterious than the seeps themselves are the features associated with them. Mud volcanoes, which erupt not lava, but a slurry of mud, water, and gas from deep beneath the seafloor. These structures, which can be hundreds of feet tall and miles across, form where gas and fluids from deep sediment layers force their way to the surface, carrying with them mud from layers that might be millions of years old. The mud often contains clasts, fragments of rock torn from deep layers, that provide geologists with samples from depths that would otherwise be inaccessible. Windows into the deep structure of continental margins. Some mud volcanoes erupt violently, expelling thousands of cubic meters of mud in sudden events that can trigger underwater landslides and tsunamis. Others ooze continuously, slowly building cones of mud that support unique communities of organisms adapted to the constant flux of sediment and chemicals. The mud itself, drawn from deep, ancient layers, sometimes contains archaeological treasures, perfectly preserved fossils, ancient wood, even human artifacts from prehistoric coastal settlements that were buried by sediments millions of years ago. In certain parts of the ocean, particularly in the Gulf of Mexico and the Mediterranean Sea, we encounter one of the most surreal features of the deep: brine pools, lakes of super salty water that sit on the ocean floor. These pools form where ancient salt deposits, laid down when these areas were isolated seas that evaporated millions of years ago, are now buried beneath thousands of feet of sediment. As seawater percolates down through cracks and faults, it dissolves these salt layers, becoming so dense with dissolved minerals that when it flows back onto the seafloor, it forms distinct bodies of water that are too heavy to mix with the overlying seawater. Approaching one of these brine pools is like entering a landscape from another world, a place where the normal rules of the ocean are suspended or inverted. The boundary between the brine and the overlying seawater is so distinct that it appears as a shimmering surface, complete with waves that lap against underwater shores. Submersibles can float on the dense brine as if it were the ocean's surface. Their buoyancy suddenly increased as they encounter the denser fluid. The interface between waters ripples with the movement of deep currents, creating an underwater seascape that seems to belong in a dream or a surrealist painting. The brine itself is often not just salty, but also rich in hydrogen sulfide and methane, creating a toxic soup that would kill most marine organisms in seconds. Fish that venture too far into the brine become disoriented by the sudden change in density and the toxic chemicals. They struggle to swim, their movements becoming sluggish as the hydrogen sulfide affects their nervous systems. Eventually, they sink into the brine and die, their bodies preserved by the high salt content, like specimens in a natural pickle jar. The shores of some brine pools are littered with preserved fish and other organisms, some potentially centuries old, creating underwater graveyards that preserve a record of the unwary visitors to these deadly lakes. Yet around the edges of these pools, where the brine mixes slowly with seawater, specialized organisms thrive. Mussels cluster along the shores, their bodies adapted to process the hydrogen sulfide that diffuses from the brine. These mussels, like their cousins at cold seeps and hydrothermal vents, harbor chemosynthetic bacteria that convert the hydrogen sulfide into usable energy. They must position themselves precisely at the interface between waters. Too deep in the brine, and they die from the toxic chemicals and lack of oxygen. Too far from it, and they can't access the hydrogen sulfide they need for their bacterial symbionts. Bacterial mats, thick and colorful, carpet the transition zone between brine and seawater. These mats, sometimes inches thick, consist of layers of different bacteria, each adapted to specific chemical conditions. The surface layers might be purple sulfur bacteria using hydrogen sulfide and light from bioluminescence or very dim ambient light for photosynthesis. Below them, green sulfur bacteria operate at even lower light levels. Deeper still, chemosynthetic bacteria thrive in the absence of any light, processing the chemical gradient between brine and seawater. These mats are among the most productive ecosystems in the deep sea, converting chemical energy into biomass with remarkable efficiency. Some brine pools contain such high concentrations of methane that it exists in a liquid state, creating underwater lakes of liquid hydrocarbon. The shores of these methane lakes support unique ecosystems, with organisms that can metabolize methane directly. Iceworms, usually found in methane hydrate deposits, burrow through the interface between liquid methane and seawater, somehow surviving in an environment that seems more appropriate to Saturn's moon Titan than Earth. These communities represent yet another alternative to photosynthesis-based life, expanding our understanding of the possible bases for biological systems. The geology of the ocean floor presents its own set of profound mysteries that continue to puzzle scientists. Consider the guyotes, flat-topped seamounts that were once volcanic islands. These structures tell a story of geological processes operating over millions of years, a story written in rock and preserved in the deep ocean. They formed as volcanoes that built islands above sea level, their peaks reaching toward the sky, perhaps covered in vegetation, possibly inhabited by unique species of plants and animals. Wave action, that constant sculptor of coastlines, eroded their peaks flat, creating platforms at sea level. Then, through processes still not fully understood, these islands sank beneath the waves. Perhaps the seafloor beneath them cooled and contracted, pulling them down. Perhaps the weight of the volcanic rock caused the underlying crust to subside. Perhaps global sea levels rose, drowning them. Whatever the cause, these once sunny islands now lie thousands of feet below the surface, their flat summits hosting communities of deep-sea organisms that have no knowledge of the sunlight that once warmed these surfaces. Some guyals show evidence of coral reefs that once grew around their margins when they were at sea level, reefs now preserved in the darkness of the deep ocean. Fossil ecosystems frozen in stone. Even more enigmatic are the features known as manganese nodules, potato-sized concretions of manganese and iron oxides that litter certain areas of the ocean floor, like a vast cobblestone road stretching for thousands of miles. These nodules grow with almost incomprehensible slowness, adding perhaps a few millimeters per million years, making them among the slowest growing geological features on Earth. They form around a nucleus. A shark's tooth, millions of years old? A fragment of volcanic rock, a piece of whale bone, or even a piece of space debris. Accumulating layers like a pearl, but over timescales that dwarf human comprehension. The chemistry of nodule formation involves complex interactions between seawater, sediment pore water, and bacterial activity. Manganese and iron dissolved in seawater precipitate onto the nodule's surface. But the process is mediated by bacteria that oxidize these metals as part of their metabolism. The nodules grow in layers, each layer recording the chemical conditions of the ocean at the time it formed. Scientists studying nodule cross-sections can read the history of ocean chemistry over millions of years, detecting changes in metal concentrations, oxygen levels, and even cosmic events recorded in the accumulation of extraterrestrial particles. What makes manganese nodules truly mysterious is their distribution and their persistence on the seafloor surface. Despite the constant rain of sediment that should bury them, they remain exposed, sometimes covering the seafloor so densely that they form a continuous pavement. Various theories have been proposed to explain this phenomenon. Some scientists suggest that bottom currents keep them clean of sediment, but the currents in many nodule fields are too weak for this explanation. Others propose that benthic organisms somehow move or rotate them, but the energy required to move millions of nodules seems prohibitive. Some researchers have suggested that the nodules might generate weak electrical fields that repel sediment particles, though this remains highly speculative. Another theory proposes that the nodules might actually move on their own, rolling slowly across the seafloor driven by uneven growth or changes in density. Recent studies have found that some nodules appear to have tracks behind them in the sediment, suggesting movement. Though whether this is active movement or passive rolling caused by currents remains unclear. The nodules are not merely geological curiosities. They are archives of ocean history and potentially valuable resources. Their layers record changes in ocean chemistry over millions of years, preserving evidence of ancient climate changes, variations in hydrothermal input, and even nearby supernovae that increase the flux of cosmic rays to Earth. They concentrate rare elements from seawater, including cobalt, nickel, copper, and rare earth elements crucial for modern technology. A single nodule might contain a higher concentration of some elements than the richest ore deposits on land. This has led to interest in mining them, with several countries and companies developing technology to harvest nodules from the deep sea floor. However, the technical challenges are immense. Operating in water miles deep, in complete darkness, under crushing pressure, while trying to minimize environmental impact. The environmental concerns are equally daunting. Nodule fields support unique ecosystems adapted to hard surfaces in a world of soft sediment. Mining would destroy these habitats and create sediment plumes that could smother filter-feeding organisms over vast areas. The noise and light from mining operations could disrupt the behavior of deep-sea organisms adapted to silence and darkness. In certain regions of the ocean floor, we find features that seem to defy conventional geological explanation. Pockmarks, circular depressions ranging from a few feet to hundreds of feet across, dot some areas of the seafloor like a landscape bombarded by meteors. These features appear to have been formed by explosive releases of gas or fluid from beneath the seafloor, but many show no current activity. The gas, usually methane, builds up beneath an impermeable layer of sediment until the pressure exceeds the strength of the overlying material, causing a sudden explosive release that excavates a crater. Some pockmarks are arranged in lines or patterns that suggest underlying geological structures. Fault lines, salt domes, or buried river channels from when sea levels were lower. Others appear randomly scattered, their distribution defying easy explanation. The timing of their formation remains mysterious. Some appear fresh, with sharp edges and little sediment fill, suggesting recent formation. Others are partially filled with sediment, indicating ages of thousands or tens of thousands of years. Still others are completely buried, only visible in seismic surveys, recording ancient gas escape events from millions of years ago. Even more puzzling are the polygonal fault systems found in certain areas, where the seafloor is divided into geometric patterns resembling giant tile work or the dried mud of a desert playa. These patterns, best visible in high-resolution sonar images that reveal the subtle topography of the seafloor, can extend for hundreds of square miles. The polygons range from tens to hundreds of meters across, their boundaries marked by small faults or fractures in the sediment. The formation of these polygonal patterns involves complex interactions between sediment compaction, fluid expulsion, and chemical reactions. As sediments are buried and compressed, water is expelled from between the grains. This dewatering process creates stress in the sediment that is relieved by the formation of regularly spaced faults. Chemical reactions, particularly the dissolution and precipitation of minerals, might also play a role, creating zones of weakness where faults preferentially form. The precise mechanisms that create such regular patterns from seemingly chaotic processes remain incompletely understood. Some scientists compare these polygonal patterns to similar features found in permafrost regions and on Mars, suggesting that they might represent a fundamental pattern-forming process that operates across different environments and even different planets. The study of these patterns on Earth might help us understand similar features on other worlds, providing insights into the geological processes that shape planetary surfaces throughout the solar system. The ocean floor also hosts features that blur the line between geology and biology, structures that are simultaneously rock and life, mineral and organism. Carbonate mounds, built by cold seep communities over thousands of years, can rise hundreds of feet from the seafloor. These structures are constructed from the shells and skeletons of countless generations of organisms. Mussels, clams, tube worms, corals, and others. As each generation dies, their hard parts are cemented together by carbonate minerals precipitated from the seep fluids, gradually building massive structures. These mounds are simultaneously geological features and biological artifacts, recording not just the history of the communities that built them, but also changes in ocean chemistry, temperature, and circulation patterns. Drilling into these mounds reveals layers like tree rings, each recording a period of growth. Some layers are dominated by mussel shells, indicating periods when these organisms thrived. Others contain more coral skeletons, suggesting different environmental conditions. Layers of pure carbonate cement might indicate periods when seep flow was strong, but biological activity was reduced. Similarly, deep-sea coral reefs, found in cold, dark waters far below the depth where tropical corals can survive, create complex three-dimensional structures that can cover hundreds of square miles. These cold-water corals, primarily species like Lophelia pertusa and Madrepora oculata, grow without the benefit of symbiotic algae that power their shallow-water cousins. They must capture all their food from the water column, extending polyps armed with stinging cells to trap passing plankton and organic particles. These deep-sea reefs grow with extraordinary slowness, adding perhaps a few millimeters per year. Over millennia, however, they build structures that rival tropical reefs in their complexity and the diversity of organisms they support. a single reef might host thousands of species: fish, crustaceans, echinoderms, mollusks, and others, many found nowhere else. The three-dimensional structure of the reef provides shelter from predators and currents, surfaces for attachment, and a variety of microhabitats that support remarkable biodiversity. As we explore the ocean floor, we must also consider its role as Earth's memory, preserving records of events that occurred long before humans evolved to observe them. The sediments of the ocean floor contain evidence of asteroid impacts, including not just the famous Chicxulub impact that ended the reign of the dinosaurs 66 million years ago, but numerous other impacts throughout Earth's history. Layers enriched in iridium, an element rare on Earth but common in asteroids, mark these cosmic collisions. Spherules, tiny glass beads formed from rock, vaporized by the impact and condensed in the atmosphere, rain down over vast areas, creating distinct layers in ocean sediments. The patterns of extinction and recovery recorded in the microscopic fossils above and below these impact layers tell stories of catastrophe and resilience. Some groups of organisms disappear instantly, their fossils abundant below the impact layer and absent above it. Others survive, but in reduced numbers, their recovery taking thousands or millions of years. Still others flourish in the aftermath, taking advantage of ecological niches left vacant by extinct species. These patterns, preserved in ocean floor sediments, provide insights into how life responds to catastrophe, lessons that might be relevant as we face modern environmental challenges. The ocean floor also preserves evidence of massive volcanic eruptions that dwarf anything in human history. The Ontong Java Plateau in the Pacific, formed by a flood basalt eruption about 120 million years ago, covers an area larger than Alaska and reaches thicknesses of 20 miles. This eruption, which lasted perhaps 1 million years, released enough lava to cover the entire United States to a depth of half a mile. The gases released by such eruptions, carbon dioxide, sulfur dioxide, hydrogen chloride, would have dramatically altered global climate and ocean chemistry. These massive volcanic events, known as large igneous provinces, are thought to have triggered several mass extinctions through their effects on climate and ocean chemistry. The Siberian traps, erupted 252 million years ago, are implicated in the Permian-Triassic extinction, the largest mass extinction in Earth's history, when over 90% of marine species went extinct. The ocean floor preserves evidence of these events in layers of volcanic ash, changes in sediment chemistry, and the fossils of organisms that lived and died during these crises. Perhaps most mysteriously, the ocean floor records reversals of Earth's magnetic field, events where magnetic north and south switch places. These reversals are preserved in the magnetic minerals of seafloor rocks, creating symmetrical patterns on either side of mid-ocean ridges that provided crucial evidence for the theory of plate tectonics. As lava erupts at the ridges and cools, magnetic minerals in the rock align with Earth's magnetic field at that time. When the field reverses, new lava records the opposite orientation, creating stripes of alternating magnetic polarity. The cause of these reversals remains one of the great unsolved problems in Earth science. They occur at irregular intervals, sometimes millions of years apart, sometimes just thousands. The reversal process itself takes thousands of years, during which Earth's magnetic field weakens and becomes chaotic, with multiple poles appearing and disappearing. During a reversal, Earth's magnetic field might drop to 10% of its normal strength, potentially exposing the surface to increased cosmic radiation. Some scientists have proposed links between magnetic reversals and extinction events, though the evidence remains controversial. The ocean floor's influence extends far beyond its boundaries, affecting global climate, ocean circulation, and even the composition of the atmosphere. The Great Ocean Conveyor Belt, technically known as thermohaline circulation, is driven partly by processes occurring at the ocean floor. Cold, salty water sinks in polar regions, particularly in the North Atlantic and around Antarctica, and flows along the bottom of the ocean. This deep water, moving with geological slowness, carries oxygen to the deepest parts of the ocean, preventing them from becoming anoxic. The journey of a water molecule through this global circulation system might take 1,000 years or more. Water that sinks in the North Atlantic flows south along the western edge of the Atlantic Basin, around the southern tip of Africa, and into the Indian and Pacific Oceans. There, it gradually rises, warms, and returns to the Atlantic as surface water. This circulation transports enormous amounts of heat from the equator toward the poles, moderating global climate. Without it, Europe would be as cold as Canada at similar latitudes. Changes in ocean floor topography can redirect these currents with profound effects on climate. The opening of the Drake Passage between South America and Antarctica about 34 million years ago allowed the establishment of the Antarctic Circumpolar Current, the world's largest current. This current, flowing continuously around Antarctica, isolated the continent thermally and is thought to have triggered the formation of the Antarctic ice sheet. The closure of the Isthmus of Panama about 3 million years ago, connecting North and South America, redirected ocean currents and might have intensified the Gulf Stream, contributing to the onset of Northern Hemisphere glaciation. The ocean floor also plays a crucial role in the carbon cycle, that great circulation of carbon through Earth systems that ultimately controls our climate. The seafloor serves as both a source and sink for carbon, with complex processes operating on different timescales. Carbonate sediments, formed from the shells of marine organisms, represent one of the largest carbon reservoirs on Earth. When plankton and other organisms build calcium carbonate shells, they remove carbon dioxide from the seawater and ultimately from the atmosphere. When these organisms die and their shells sink to the ocean floor, they take this carbon with them, locking it away for millions of years. The formation of these carbonate sediments is a massive global process. The white cliffs of Dover, the limestone of the Florida Keys, the marble of the Italian Alps. All these began as accumulations of microscopic shells on ancient ocean floors. This process has been operating for billions of years, gradually removing carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and storing it in rock. Without this biological pump, Earth's atmosphere might contain as much CO2 as Venus, making our planet uninhabitable. Yet this system is sensitive to changes in ocean chemistry. As the ocean absorbs carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, it becomes more acidic, affecting the ability of organisms to build carbonate shells. This ocean acidification, sometimes called the other CO2 problem, threatens not just individual species, but the entire carbonate system that has regulated Earth's climate for millions of years. Below a certain depth, called the carbonate compensation depth, the pressure and chemistry of seawater cause calcium carbonate to dissolve. As the ocean becomes more acidic, this depth rises, potentially dissolving sediments that have been stable for millions of years. The chemical reactions between seawater and ocean floor rocks also influence global chemistry. Fresh volcanic rock at mid-ocean ridges reacts with seawater, removing some elements and adding others. Magnesium is removed from seawater and incorporated into clay minerals, while calcium is released from the rocks. Sulfate is removed and converted to sulfide minerals, while metals like iron, manganese, and copper are released into the water. This process helps maintain the chemical balance of the oceans, buffering changes that might otherwise make the oceans inhospitable to life. The hot water circulating through the oceanic crust at hydrothermal vents represents one of the most important chemical processing systems on Earth. The entire volume of the ocean is processed through these systems every few million years, making them major controls on ocean chemistry. The temperature of the rocks, the rate of circulation, and the types of minerals present all affect what elements are added to or removed from seawater. Changes in seafloor spreading rates, which affect the amount of fresh volcanic rock available for reaction, can alter ocean chemistry on geological timescales. As we contemplate these vast processes, we might wonder about the ocean floors of the past, those that have been recycled back into Earth's interior through subduction. The oldest ocean floor currently existing is only about 200 million years old, less than 5% of Earth's age. All the ocean floor that existed when life first evolved, when the atmosphere gained its oxygen, when the first complex organisms appeared, has long since been destroyed, recycled back into the mantle to perhaps one day emerge again as new ocean floor. What mysteries did those ancient seafloors hold? What forms of life might have inhabited them? Some clues come from ophiolites, fragments of ancient ocean floor that have been thrust up onto continents through tectonic collisions. These rocks, now exposed on land in places like Oman, Cyprus, and California, allow us to study ocean floors that existed hundreds of millions or even billions of years ago. They contain evidence of ancient hydrothermal systems, including fossilized vent chimneys and the mineralogical signatures of hot water circulation. Some ophiolites contain evidence of life, including fossilized microorganisms and the chemical signatures of biological processes. These findings suggest that hydrothermal vents have been inhabited by life for billions of years, possibly since life first evolved. The discovery of fossilized microorganisms in 3.5 billion-year-old rocks from Australia, which might represent ancient sea floor, suggests that life might have originated in the deep ocean rather than in the shallow pools once favored by scientists. This possibility has profound implications for our search for life beyond Earth. If life can originate in the darkness of the ocean floor, sustained by chemical energy from a planet's interior rather than by sunlight, then worlds we once dismissed as inhospitable become potential abodes for life. The subsurface ocean of Europa, hidden beneath miles of ice, might host hydrothermal vents powered by tidal heating from Jupiter's immense gravity. Enceladus, another moon of Saturn, shoots geysers of water into space that contain organic compounds and evidence of hydrothermal activity. Even Mars, now cold and dry, shows evidence of ancient hydrothermal systems that might have harbored life billions of years ago. The study of Earth's ocean floor has become a window into astrobiology, the science of life in the universe. Researchers studying organisms at hydrothermal vents are developing techniques that might one day be used to search for life on other worlds. The extremophiles of the deep ocean, thriving in conditions once thought impossible for life, expand our concept of the habitable zone, both on Earth and throughout the cosmos. The chemical signatures of life preserved in ocean floor rocks provide templates for what we might look for on other worlds. The exploration of the ocean floor has always pushed the boundaries of human technology and ingenuity. The first systematic attempts to study the deep ocean began in the 19th century with expeditions like that of HMS Challenger, which from 1872 to 1874, 1876, circumnavigated the globe, taking soundings and collecting samples. Using nothing more than weighted ropes and simple dredges, the Challenger expedition discovered the mid-Atlantic Ridge, the Mariana Trench, and collected thousands of new species, proving definitively that life existed in the deepest ocean. The scientists aboard Challenger worked under conditions that would seem primitive today. They lowered miles of hemp rope over the side to measure depth, a process that could take hours for a single sounding. They used dredges and trawls to collect samples from the bottom, never knowing what they might bring up. Yet their systematic approach and careful documentation laid the foundation for all future ocean exploration. Their discovery that life existed at all depths revolutionized biology, while their mapping of ocean depth revealed the hidden topography of 2/3 of Earth's surface. The invention of echo sounding in the early 20th century revolutionized our ability to map the ocean floor. Instead of laboriously lowering weighted lines, ships could bounce sound waves off the bottom and measure the time they took to return. This technology, refined during World War I and World War II for submarine warfare, revealed the true complexity of ocean floor topography. Mountains and valleys, ridges and trenches appeared where flat plains had been assumed. The systematic mapping that followed, particularly during the Cold War when both superpowers sought to understand the ocean for submarine warfare, led to one of the greatest scientific revolutions of all time: the theory of plate tectonics. The discovery that the seafloor was spreading from mid-ocean ridges, combined with the matching of magnetic reversals on either side of these ridges, provided the mechanism that Alfred Wegener's continental drift hypothesis had lacked. Suddenly, seemingly unrelated phenomena, earthquakes, volcanoes, mountain building, the distribution of fossils, all made sense as manifestations of plate tectonics. The development of deep-sea submersibles has allowed humans to visit the ocean floor in person, though the number of people who have descended to the deepest points remains smaller than the number who have walked on the moon. The bathyscaphe Trieste's descent to the bottom of the Mariana Trench in 1960, with Jacques Piccard and Don Walsh aboard, proved that humans could reach the deepest parts of the ocean. Their observation of a fish at the bottom proved that life existed even in the deepest trenches, under the greatest pressures. The journey to the bottom of the Mariana Trench takes hours, passing through zones of life adapted to different pressures and temperatures. Modern submersibles, descendants of Trieste, have revealed wonders that Piccard and Walsh could only glimpse through their small porthole. High-definition cameras capture images of creatures that seem to belong to another world. Manipulator arms collect samples with surgical precision. Sensors measure temperature, pressure, chemistry, and currents with unprecedented accuracy. Those who have made these deep descents describe it as visiting an alien world, a place so removed from human experience that it changes one's perspective on Earth and our place in the universe. The absolute darkness, broken only by the lights of the submersible and the occasional bioluminescent flash, creates a sense of isolation more complete than anywhere else on Earth. The pressure, palpable even inside a pressure sphere designed to withstand it, serves as a constant reminder of the hostile environment outside. Yet there is also a sense of privilege, of seeing landscapes that no human eyes have seen, of being present at discoveries that expand human knowledge. The psychological impact of exploring the ocean floor can be profound. Many deep-sea explorers describe a sense of humility in the face of the ocean's vastness and mystery. The knowledge that you are miles below the surface, that the water pressure outside could crush you in an instant, that you are utterly dependent on technology for survival, creates a unique psychological state. Some describe it as meditative, others as terrifying, still others as transcendent. Yet most ocean exploration today is done by robotic explorers, mechanical ambassadors that extend our reach without risking human lives. Autonomous underwater vehicles, AUVs, can map vast areas of seafloor with unprecedented detail, following pre-programmed routes and making decisions based on what they encounter. Some AUVs can operate for months, surfacing periodically to transmit data before descending again to continue their survey. They have mapped underwater mountains, discovered new hydrothermal vents, and documented changes in seafloor communities over time. Remotely operated vehicles, ROVs, controlled by pilots on surface ships via fiber optic cables, can perform delicate sampling and experimental work under human control. These robots, equipped with high-definition cameras, manipulator arms, and sophisticated sensors, have become the workhorses of ocean exploration. They can operate for days or weeks continuously, limited only by weather at the surface and the endurance of their human operators. ROVs have discovered new species, documented unknown geological features, and observed behaviors never before seen. The technology continues to advance rapidly. New materials allow vehicles to go deeper while being lighter and more maneuverable. Better batteries allow longer missions. Artificial intelligence allows vehicles to recognize features of interest and adapt their behavior accordingly. Swarms of small, cheap vehicles might soon explore large areas simultaneously, communicating with each other to coordinate their search patterns. Yet for all our technological prowess, we have explored less than 5% of the ocean floor in any detail. We have better maps of the Moon, Mars, and even some asteroids than we do of our own ocean floor. Every expedition continues to make new discoveries, suggesting that what we know is only a tiny fraction of what remains to be discovered. The ocean floor might harbor millions of undiscovered species, geological features that challenge our understanding of Earth processes, and clues to some of the most fundamental questions about our planet and life itself. The cultural impact of ocean floor discoveries extends far beyond the scientific community. These revelations have influenced art, literature, philosophy, and even religion. The knowledge that entire ecosystems exist in permanent darkness, that life thrives in conditions once thought impossible, has expanded our conception of what it means to be alive. The deep ocean has become a powerful metaphor for the unconscious mind, for hidden knowledge, for the mysteries that persist in an age that sometimes seems to have explained everything. Ancient cultures intuited some of these mysteries without the benefit of modern technology. The Polynesians, master navigators who colonized the vast Pacific long before Europeans developed ocean-going vessels, understood that the ocean had different layers, each with its own characteristics and inhabitants. Their oral traditions preserve observations about deep currents, underwater mountains, and the behavior of deep-sea creatures that science has only recently confirmed. They knew, for instance, that certain species of fish made daily vertical migrations, rising to feed at night and descending during the day. Knowledge that Western science didn't acquire until the 20th century. The traditional knowledge of these navigators, passed down through generations in songs, stories, and closely guarded secrets, represents a different way of understanding the ocean, one based on intimate observation and deep cultural connection rather than technological measurement. They could detect the presence of islands beyond the horizon by reading wave patterns, observing the flight of birds, and even sensing the reflection of underwater features on the undersides of clouds. This knowledge, nearly lost as traditional ways of life changed, is now being documented and studied by scientists who recognize its value. Many cultures have myths about lands or cities beneath the ocean. The Greek philosopher Plato wrote of Atlantis, an advanced civilization that sank beneath the waves as punishment for its hubris. Hindu mythology speaks of entire worlds submerged beneath the ocean, including the city of Dvaraka, the golden city of Krishna that was reclaimed by the sea. Japanese folklore tells of Ryugu-jo, the dragon palace beneath the sea where time passes differently than on land. A visitor might spend what seems like days there, only to return to find centuries have passed. These myths might preserve cultural memories of actual events. The end of the last ice age, about 12,000 years ago, saw sea levels rise by over 400 feet, drowning vast areas of inhabited land. Coastal cities and settlements would have been submerged, their inhabitants forced to flee to higher ground. The Black Sea, once a freshwater lake, was catastrophically flooded when the Mediterranean broke through the Bosporus. The Persian Gulf, now a shallow sea, was once a river valley where humans lived. These events, traumatic for the people who experienced them, might have been preserved in cultural memory as stories of great floods and sunken lands. Modern culture continues to be fascinated by the ocean floor, though our myths now wear the clothing of science and science fiction. Films and books imagine giant monsters in the deep, descendants of prehistoric creatures that survived in the ocean's depths, aliens that arrived on Earth and chose the ocean as their domain, or mutations created by human pollution and nuclear testing. These stories, while fictional, often draw on real discoveries. The giant squid, once dismissed as sailors' mythology, is now known to be real, growing to lengths of 40 feet or more, with eyes the size of dinner plates, the largest eyes in the animal kingdom. The colossal squid, discovered more recently, is even larger and more mysterious. With rotating hooks on its tentacles and the largest beak of any squid, it seems designed for epic battles in the darkness. Sperm whales bear scars from encounters with these creatures, evidence of struggles we can barely imagine. The discovery that these mythical creatures are real has only fueled speculation about what else might lurk in the unexplored depths. Science fiction writers have imagined civilizations in the deep ocean, perhaps descendants of Atlantis, perhaps aliens, perhaps evolved dolphins or octopi. While these remain firmly in the realm of fiction, the intelligence of some marine creatures continues to surprise us. Octopi can solve complex problems, use tools, and even engage in what appears to be play. Some species of whales have complex social structures and might have languages we don't understand. The possibility of non-human intelligence in the ocean, while not at the level imagined in fiction, raises philosophical questions about consciousness, communication, and our relationship with other species. The ocean floor also serves as a powerful reminder of nature's creativity and resilience. The organisms that inhabit the deep have evolved solutions to problems that human engineers struggle to solve. The pressure-resistant proteins of deep-sea fish maintain their structure under forces that would denature ordinary proteins, suggesting new approaches to creating stable biological molecules for medical and industrial applications. The fiber optic-like structures of certain deep-sea sponges, which conduct light more efficiently than human-made fiber optics, might inspire new technologies for communication and sensing. The bioluminescence of deep-sea organisms has already led to practical applications. The green fluorescent protein, GFP, originally isolated from a jellyfish, has become one of the most important tools in molecular biology, allowing scientists to track gene expression and protein localization in living cells. Luciferase enzymes from various marine organisms are used in research and medical diagnostics. The study of how deep-sea organisms produce light without heat might lead to more efficient lighting technologies. The antifreeze proteins of polar deep-sea fish, which prevent their blood from freezing in sub-zero water, might lead to better organ preservation techniques, improved frost resistance in crops, or new approaches to cryopreservation. The adhesives produced by mussels and barnacles, which work underwater and are stronger than many synthetic glues, are being studied for medical applications like closing wounds or attaching implants to bone. The pharmaceutical potential of deep-sea organisms has only begun to be explored. The unique conditions of the deep ocean have driven the evolution of novel biochemical compounds, many of which have potential medical applications. Compounds from deep-sea sponges have shown promise as anti-cancer agents, with some now in clinical trials. Enzymes from hydrothermal vent bacteria, able to function at high temperatures, have revolutionized molecular biology techniques like PCR, polymerase, chain reaction, essential for DNA analysis and COVID testing. The biodiversity of the ocean floor might hold cures for diseases we haven't yet learned to treat. Deep-sea bacteria produce antibiotics, unlike any from terrestrial organisms. Some deep-sea organisms produce compounds that affect the nervous system in novel ways, potentially leading to new treatments for neurological conditions. Others produce anti-inflammatory compounds, anticoagulants, or immune modulators. Yet we have examined only a tiny fraction of deep-sea species for such compounds, and we continue to discover new species faster than we can study the ones we know. As we continue our exploration of the ocean floor's mysteries, we encounter phenomena that challenge our understanding of fundamental processes. In 2020, scientists discovered that certain areas of the deep Pacific produce oxygen in complete darkness, far from any photosynthetic organisms. This dark oxygen appears to be associated with manganese nodules, suggesting that these seemingly inert objects might be catalyzing chemical reactions that split water molecules, releasing oxygen. If confirmed, this discovery would revolutionize our understanding of oxygen production and might have implications for the search for life on other worlds. It might also help explain how aerobic organisms can exist in parts of the deep ocean where oxygen should be depleted. The mechanism of dark oxygen production remains mysterious. One hypothesis suggests that the nodules act as batteries, generating electrical currents that drive electrolysis of seawater. The different metals in the nodules, manganese, iron, copper, nickel, might create galvanic cells when connected by seawater. Another possibility is that bacteria associated with the nodules are producing oxygen through unknown metabolic pathways. Whatever the mechanism, the discovery reminds us that we don't fully understand even fundamental biogeochemical processes. Other recent discoveries include vast fields of small volcanoes, numbering in the thousands, that were previously unknown because they were too small to detect with older sonar systems. These petit spot volcanoes appear to form through a mechanism different from the volcanism at plate boundaries or hotspots. They might represent places where the weight of the overlying plate squeezes, melts out of the underlying mantle, like water from a sponge. Each of these small volcanoes brings samples of the deep mantle to the ocean floor, providing windows into the Earth's interior that would otherwise be inaccessible. The distribution of these petit spot volcanoes suggests that they might be far more common than previously thought. If so, they could represent a significant but overlooked component of global volcanism, contributing to the flux of mantle-derived materials to the ocean and atmosphere. Their lavas often contain unusual minerals and high concentrations of volatile elements, suggesting they tap sources deep in the mantle that are different from those feeding mid-ocean ridges or hotspot volcanoes. Perhaps most remarkably, scientists have discovered that the ocean floor hosts a vast, deep biosphere, communities of microorganisms living in the sediments and even in the solid rock beneath. This subsurface biosphere might contain as much biomass as all the life in the ocean above, possibly more than all terrestrial life combined. These organisms live at the very limits of what we consider habitable, in temperatures approaching the boiling point of water, in rocks with pore spaces smaller than the organisms themselves, sustained by chemical reactions so slow that a single cell division might take centuries or even millennia. The deep biosphere challenges our concepts of life and death, of individual and community, of evolution and adaptation. Some researchers suggest that these deep microorganisms might not be individual organisms in the conventional sense, but part of a vast, interconnected network sharing genetic material and resources through horizontal gene transfer and extracellular DNA. They might represent a form of life more ancient and more fundamental than the cellular life we know on the surface, perhaps preserving characteristics of the earliest life on Earth or even precellular life. The metabolisms of deep biosphere organisms are unlike anything on the surface. Some appear to live on hydrogen gas produced by reactions between water and rock. Others might use radioactive decay as an energy source, capturing the energy from uranium and thorium decay to drive their metabolism. Still others might exist in a state of near-suspended animation, their metabolisms so slow that they blur the line between life and non-life. The discovery of the deep biosphere has implications for the origin of life and its potential distribution in the universe. If life exists miles beneath the ocean floor, in rocks that have been isolated from the surface for millions of years, it suggests that life might originate not in surface pools warmed by the sun, but in the dark depths of planetary interiors. This would mean that life might be possible on worlds we never considered habitable. Worlds without atmospheres, without surface water, without the conditions we associate with habitability. The sounds of the ocean floor present another frontier of discovery. Long thought to be a silent world, the deep ocean is actually filled with sounds. Some understood, many mysterious. The groaning of shifting sediments as underwater landslides begin. The crackling of thermal stress in rocks as they cool, the rumbling of underwater earthquakes, the calls of whales that can travel thousands of miles through the deep sound channel. Hydrophones placed on the ocean floor have recorded sounds that defy explanation, adding an acoustic dimension to the mysteries of the deep. The bloop, an ultra-low frequency sound detected in 1997 by hydrophones originally deployed to detect Soviet submarines, was one of the loudest sounds ever recorded in the ocean. It rose in frequency over about a minute and was heard by sensors over 3,000 miles apart. For years, it fueled speculation about giant, unknown creatures in the deep. Eventually, scientists determined it was likely caused by the fracturing of a large iceberg in Antarctica, but only after years of analysis and debate. The fact that ice breaking thousands of miles away could create such a powerful sound reminds us of the ocean's ability to transmit energy across vast distances. Other sounds remain unexplained despite years of study. The upsweep, a sound that has been detected seasonally since 1991, appears to come from a volcanic region of the Pacific, but doesn't match any known volcanic sound. It consists of a long train of narrow-band upsweeping sounds that last several seconds each, repeating over periods of hours or days. The seasonal pattern suggests a biological source, but no known organism produces sounds like this. The Julia, recorded in 1999, lasted for 15 seconds and was heard over an area spanning thousands of miles. Its frequency pattern doesn't match any known geological or biological source. The slowdown sound, recorded in 1997, descended in frequency over about 7 minutes and was loud enough to be heard across the entire Pacific. While scientists believe it was caused by a massive iceberg grounding on the ocean floor, the exact mechanism remains unclear. The whistle sound, detected regularly at certain locations, might be caused by volcanic gases escaping through vents. But this hasn't been confirmed. These mysterious sounds remind us that the ocean floor remains full of phenomena we don't understand, processes we haven't identified, possibly even forms of communication we haven't recognized. Recent research has revealed that many deep-sea organisms produce sounds we're only beginning to detect and understand. Some fish produce low-frequency sounds by vibrating their swim bladders, possibly for communication or navigation. Crustaceans create clicks and pops by snapping specialized appendages. Even some invertebrates might produce sounds through mechanisms we haven't identified. The acoustic world of the deep ocean, long hidden from us by technological limitations, is proving to be rich and complex. The ocean floor continues to surprise us with its connections to other Earth systems, revealing itself as a crucial component of planetary processes we're only beginning to understand. Recent research has shown that groundwater from land continues to flow beneath the ocean floor, extending sometimes hundreds of miles from shore. This submarine groundwater discharge carries nutrients, contaminants, and fresh water far out to sea, creating underwater springs on the ocean floor that support unique ecosystems. These freshwater springs on the ocean floor were known to ancient mariners, who sometimes collected fresh water at sea from these sources. Pearl divers in the Persian Gulf knew of springs where they could fill their water skins while working on the ocean floor. Polynesian navigators knew of places where fresh water bubbled up from the sea. The fact that fresh water, lighter than salt water, could emerge from the ocean floor and rise to the surface seems to violate our intuition about how fluids behave. Yet it happens regularly in certain locations. The volume of groundwater discharged to the ocean might be enormous, possibly equaling a significant fraction of river discharge. This water carries dissolved nutrients from land, supporting productivity in coastal waters. It also carries contaminants, spreading pollution far from its source. In some places, the groundwater is ancient, having been underground for thousands or millions of years, carrying chemical signatures of past climates and environments. The discovery of extensive groundwater systems beneath the ocean floor has implications for understanding ocean chemistry, coastal ecosystems, and even the search for life on other planets. If water can flow through rocks beneath the ocean floor for hundreds of miles, similar processes might occur on ocean worlds like Europa or Enceladus, potentially creating habitable environments far from any surface. The ocean floor also influences weather and climate in ways we are only beginning to understand. The roughness of the ocean floor affects the propagation of tsunamis, determining which coastlines will be hit hardest by these devastating waves. Underwater mountains can focus tsunami energy, creating localized areas of extreme wave height. Submarine canyons can funnel tsunamis toward shore, amplifying their destructive power. Understanding these interactions is crucial for tsunami prediction and warning systems. Underwater mountains also create standing waves in the deep ocean called internal waves, which can be hundreds of feet high but are invisible at the surface. These waves, propagating along the boundary between water layers of different densities, can affect surface conditions thousands of feet above. They mix nutrients from deep water into the surface layer, supporting productivity. They also affect the propagation of sound through the ocean, creating acoustic shadows and focal zones that affect submarine detection and marine mammal communication. The temperature of the ocean floor, maintained by the enormous heat capacity of the overlying water, affects the stability of methane hydrates that could release vast amounts of greenhouse gases if they warm. Recent studies suggest that warming ocean waters are already destabilizing hydrates in some regions, potentially creating a feedback loop that could accelerate climate change. The release of methane from hydrates might have triggered past climate changes, including the Paleocene-Eocene thermal maximum, when global temperatures rose dramatically in just a few thousand years. Recent studies have suggested that the ocean floor might even influence the formation of hurricanes. The loop current in the Gulf of Mexico, which plays a crucial role in hurricane intensification, is affected by the topography of the ocean floor. Deep, warm water eddies, guided by underwater mountains and valleys, can provide the energy that transforms a tropical storm into a major hurricane. The depth of the thermocline, influenced by ocean floor topography, affects how much a hurricane weakens the ocean surface through mixing, potentially affecting the storm's intensity and the likelihood of rapid intensification. As technology advances, our ability to explore and understand the ocean floor grows exponentially. New types of sensors can detect the faintest chemical traces, allowing us to map invisible plumes and gradients that reveal hidden seeps and vents. Improved sonar systems can resolve features smaller than a car from the surface, revealing details of ocean floor structure previously invisible. Environmental DNA, eDNA, sampling allows us to detect the presence of organisms from water samples alone, revealing the distribution of species without ever seeing them. Artificial intelligence and machine learning are revolutionizing our ability to process the vast amounts of data collected from the ocean floor. These systems can identify patterns in sonar data that human observers might miss, classify organisms from video footage with superhuman accuracy, and even predict where new hydrothermal vents might be found based on geological patterns. Ocean floor observatories, connected to shore by fiber optic cables, provide real-time data on everything from earthquake activity to whale migrations, allowing us to observe processes as they happen rather than reconstructing them after the fact. These cabled observatories represent a new paradigm in ocean science. Instead of brief snapshots from ship-based expeditions, we can now monitor the ocean floor continuously for years or decades. We can watch hydrothermal vents evolve, observe the response of deep-sea communities to environmental changes, and detect geological events as they occur. Some observatories include arrays of instruments spread over hundreds of square kilometers, providing three-dimensional views of ocean processes. Yet each technological advance seems to reveal new mysteries, rather than solving old ones. The more we can see, the more we realize we don't understand. How do organisms navigate in the absolute darkness of the deep ocean? What determines where new volcanoes will form? How do deep-sea larvae know when they've found suitable habitat? What fraction of deep-sea species have we discovered, and how many remain unknown? How do deep-sea ecosystems respond to climate change? What role does the deep biosphere play in global biogeochemical cycles? These questions drive continued exploration and research. Every year, new expeditions set out to explore uncharted regions of the ocean floor. New species are discovered on almost every deep-sea expedition, sometimes dozens of new species from a single dive. New geological features are mapped, new chemical processes identified, new ecological relationships discovered. The pace of discovery shows no signs of slowing. If anything, it's accelerating as technology improves and more countries develop deep-sea research capabilities. The future of ocean floor exploration promises even more remarkable discoveries. Plans are underway for new deep-sea research vessels and submersibles that can reach any depth and stay down for extended periods. Some designs include habitats that would allow scientists to live on the ocean floor for weeks or months, like underwater versions of the International Space Station. These would allow continuous observation and experimentation, potentially revolutionizing our understanding of deep-sea processes. Swarms of autonomous underwater vehicles might one day map the entire ocean floor at high resolution, working together like schools of robotic fish. These vehicles could explore areas too dangerous for human-occupied submersibles, such as active volcanic regions or unstable slopes. They could search systematically for new species, new vents, new geological features, operating continuously for months or years. Some researchers envision a time when we might have a real-time, three-dimensional model of the entire ocean, including the ocean floor, updated continuously by sensors and autonomous vehicles. This digital ocean would allow us to observe processes spanning from seconds to centuries, from microscopic to global scales. We could track individual animals, monitor chemical plumes, watch sediments accumulate, and observe the slow growth of manganese nodules. We could predict underwater earthquakes, forecast tsunamis, and understand how the ocean responds to climate change. The ocean floor also presents opportunities and challenges for human use that will shape the coming decades. The mineral resources of the deep sea represent trillions of dollars in value and contain elements crucial for renewable energy technologies. Manganese nodules contain cobalt for batteries, rare earth elements for wind turbines and electric motors, and copper for electrical systems. Seafloor massive sulfides at extinct hydrothermal vents contain gold, silver, copper, and zinc. Cobalt-rich crusts on seamounts contain platinum, tellurium, and other elements critical for modern technology. Several countries and companies are already developing technology to extract these resources. Prototype mining vehicles have been tested, designed to collect nodules with minimal disturbance to the surrounding sediment. However, the environmental impacts of deep-sea mining remain poorly understood and potentially catastrophic. The ecosystems that would be destroyed have barely been studied. We don't even know what species live in most areas targeted for mining. The sediment plumes generated by mining could affect life throughout the water column, potentially over vast areas. The noise and light from mining operations could disrupt the behavior of deep-sea organisms across entire ocean basins. The question of whether and how to exploit the resources of the ocean floor represents one of the great ethical challenges of our time. The ocean floor belongs to no single nation, yet decisions made by individual countries or companies could affect the entire planet. The organisms of the deep sea have no voice in these decisions, yet they have inhabited these environments for millions of years, far longer than humans have existed. How do we balance the needs of human society with the preservation of Earth's last frontier? How do we value ecosystems we barely understand against resources we desperately need? The governance of ocean floor resources is complex and evolving. The International Seabed Authority, established under the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, manages mineral resources in areas beyond national jurisdiction. However, enforcement is difficult in the vast ocean, and not all countries have signed the relevant treaties. Some argue that the resources of the deep sea should be preserved as the common heritage of humanity, with any benefits shared globally. Others contend that those who invest in extraction technology should reap the rewards. Climate change adds urgency to these questions. The ocean is absorbing much of the excess heat and carbon dioxide that human activities are adding to the atmosphere, and these changes are affecting even the deepest regions. Deep-sea corals are showing signs of stress from warming water and ocean acidification. The distribution of deep-sea species is shifting as temperatures change, with cold-adapted species retreating toward the poles or into deeper water. The stability of methane hydrates is threatened by warming, potentially creating a feedback loop that could accelerate climate change. Yet the ocean floor might also offer solutions to climate change. The vast capacity of ocean sediments to store carbon dioxide, either as carbonate minerals or as liquid CO2 trapped beneath impermeable sediment layers, might provide a way to remove excess carbon from the atmosphere. Some researchers propose fertilizing the ocean to increase the production of organisms, whose shells would eventually sink to the ocean floor, sequestering carbon for millions of years. Others suggest directly injecting captured CO2 into ocean floor sediments, where it would be trapped by pressure and low temperature. These proposals remain controversial, with unknown consequences for ocean ecosystems. Ocean fertilization might trigger harmful algal blooms or alter food webs in unpredictable ways. CO2 injection could acidify surrounding waters, affecting deep-sea organisms. The cure might be worse than the disease, or it might be our only hope for avoiding catastrophic climate change. These are decisions that will require careful science, thoughtful ethics, and global cooperation. The ocean floor reminds us of the interconnectedness of Earth's systems. What happens in the deepest trenches affects the atmosphere above. The grinding of tectonic plates on the ocean floor drives the volcanism that maintains our atmosphere's composition. The circulation of water through ocean floor rocks regulates ocean chemistry, which in turn affects climate. The evolution of life at hydrothermal vents might have provided the ancestors of all complex life on Earth. We cannot understand our planet, cannot predict its future, cannot ensure our survival, without understanding its ocean floor. As our exploration of the ocean floor continues, we encounter phenomena that seem to belong more to fantasy than reality. In certain areas, the seafloor is carpeted with glass sponges, their skeletons made of intricate lattices of glass fibers that would be impossible to manufacture with human technology. These sponges, some growing to the size of cars, create underwater forests of glass, their structures conducting light like fiber optic cables. The glass is arranged in a complex hierarchical structure that provides maximum strength with minimum material, inspiring engineers studying new materials. Some species of shrimp live their entire adult lives inside these glass sponges, entering as larvae and growing too large to escape through the sponge's pores. They spend their lives in beautiful prisons of glass, feeding on particles brought in by the sponge's water circulation, their waste providing nutrients for their host. This relationship, neither purely parasitic nor purely symbiotic, represents one of many complex interactions in the deep sea that don't fit our neat categories. Elsewhere, we find lakes of liquid carbon dioxide pooled on the ocean floor, kept liquid by the pressure despite temperatures that would vaporize it at the surface. These CO2 lakes, discovered off the coast of Japan and in other volcanic regions, create their own weather systems, with CO2 droplets raining upward as they warm and become buoyant. The interface between liquid CO2 and seawater shimmers like a mirage, and organisms that venture too close become narcotized by the high CO2 concentrations. Specialized organisms have evolved to live at the margins of these CO2 lakes, tolerating levels of carbon dioxide that would be lethal to most life. Some bacteria might even use the CO2 as a carbon source, fixing it into organic molecules through chemosynthesis. These communities might provide insights into how life could exist in the CO2-rich environments of early Earth or other planets. The ocean floor hosts migrations that dwarf any on land, though they occur in a vertical dimension rather than horizontal. Deep-sea prawns and other organisms undertake daily vertical migrations of thousands of feet, rising toward the surface at night to feed in the productive upper waters and descending to the depths during the day to avoid predators. This migration, involving billions of organisms, represents the largest movement of biomass on Earth. Yet it was unknown until the 20th century when sonar operators noticed a false bottom that rose and fell with day and night. The reasons for this migration remain partially understood. Avoiding visual predators in daylight is clearly important, but the energy cost of swimming thousands of feet twice a day is enormous. Some scientists suggest that the cool, deep waters slow metabolism during the day, conserving energy. Others propose that vertical migration allows organisms to exploit food resources in surface waters while processing them in the deep, effectively farming the ocean's vertical dimension. Some organisms of the ocean floor seem to violate the rules of biology as we understand them. Certain deep-sea clams have been found with shells that are hundreds of years old, but soft tissues that are only decades old, suggesting that they can somehow replace their entire body while maintaining the same shell. This would be like a building replacing all its rooms and infrastructure while keeping the same exterior walls. How they accomplish this, and why, remains a mystery. Some deep-sea corals appear to stop growing for decades or centuries, entering a kind of suspended animation, then resume growth when conditions improve. During these dormant periods, they're alive but not growing, not reproducing, barely metabolizing. This strategy might allow them to survive periods of poor conditions, such as changes in current patterns that reduce food supply. The ability to essentially pause life and restart it later challenges our understanding of aging and senescence. Certain deep-sea fish have been found to have antifreeze proteins that work by a mechanism different from those in polar surface fish. While surface fish antifreeze proteins work by binding to ice crystals and preventing their growth, some deep-sea antifreeze proteins appear to prevent ice formation entirely, possibly by structuring water molecules in a way that prevents crystallization. Understanding these mechanisms might lead to better ways to preserve organs for transplantation or to protect crops from frost damage. The ocean floor preserves evidence of catastrophes that shaped the modern world, each one written in the sediments and rocks for those who know how to read them. The Chicxulub impact that ended the age of dinosaurs left a layer of impact debris on ocean floors worldwide, including shocked quartz grains that could only form under the extreme pressures of an impact, and tektites, glass beads formed from rock vaporized by the impact. But this was not the only such event. Ocean floor sediments record at least 5 major mass extinctions and numerous smaller ones. The end Permian extinction, the largest in Earth's history, is marked by a sudden change in the types of organisms preserved as fossils. A shift in carbon isotopes indicating massive changes in the carbon cycle, and evidence of ocean acidification and anoxia. The end Triassic extinction shows evidence of massive volcanism, with layers of volcanic ash and changes in sediment chemistry indicating dramatic environmental changes. Each extinction event was followed by a recovery, but the recovery patterns differed. After some extinctions, life rebounded quickly with surviving groups rapidly diversifying. After others, particularly the end Permian, recovery took millions of years, with ecosystems remaining simplified and low diversity for extended periods. These patterns, preserved in ocean floor sediments, might help us understand and perhaps prevent or mitigate future extinction events. The ocean floor also records more gradual changes that were no less profound in their effects. The Great Oxidation Event, when photosynthetic organisms first filled the atmosphere with oxygen about 2.4 billion years ago, is recorded in the chemistry of ancient seafloor rocks. Iron formations, created when dissolved iron in the ancient ocean reacted with newly available oxygen, mark this transformation. This event, which would have been catastrophic for the anaerobic organisms that dominated early Earth, set the stage for the evolution of complex life. The ocean floor even preserves evidence of evolutionary innovations. The Cambrian explosion, when most major animal groups first appeared about 540 million years ago, is recorded in seafloor sediments that preserve not just shells and hard parts, but sometimes soft tissues, providing glimpses of early animal forms. The development of shells and skeletons, which allowed organisms to become fossilized more easily, marks a revolution in life history strategies and ecological interactions. Looking at these ancient records, we can see that the ocean floor has witnessed the entire history of complex life on Earth. It was there when the first multicellular organisms evolved from aggregations of single cells. It was there when the first animals developed nervous systems, when the first eyes evolved, when the first predators began hunting prey. It was there when plants first colonized land, when fish first developed limbs, when dinosaurs ruled the earth, when mammals were small nocturnal creatures hiding from reptilian predators. Every major innovation in the history of life has left its mark on the ocean floor, in the form of fossils, chemical signatures, or changes in sedimentation patterns. The development of photosynthesis, the evolution of sexual reproduction, the invention of mineralized skeletons, the development of complex ecosystems, all are recorded in ocean floor sediments. Reading these records is like reading the autobiography of life itself, written in a language of minerals and molecules. The ocean floor connects us to deep time in a way that few other environments can. Standing on land, we might see rocks that are millions of years old, but they have been weathered, eroded, changed by exposure to air and rain. On the ocean floor, sediments that fell millions of years ago remain largely unchanged, preserving details that would be lost on land. A footprint in ocean floor mud might last for centuries. A dead organism might remain recognizable for millennia. A pattern of sediments might preserve its structure for millions of years. This preservation extends to human artifacts as well. Shipwrecks on the ocean floor can remain intact for centuries or even millennia, preserved by the cold, the darkness, and the lack of oxygen in deep sediments. These wrecks are time capsules, preserving not just the ships themselves, but their contents, the belongings of their crews and passengers, sometimes even organic materials like leather, cloth, and food. The ocean floor has become an archive of human maritime history. From ancient Greek trading vessels carrying amphorae of wine to World War II submarines with their crews still aboard. Ancient harbors, now submerged by rising sea levels, preserve evidence of past civilizations. Off the coast of Egypt, the cities of Heracleion and Canopus, drowned 1,200 years ago, are being explored by underwater archaeologists. Their temples, statues, and inscriptions, preserved by the sea, provide insights into ancient Egyptian culture that would have been lost if these cities had remained on land. Similar submerged sites exist around the world, each one a window into past human cultures. But the ocean floor also reminds us of the brevity of human history compared to geological time. The oldest human artifacts on the ocean floor are perhaps a few thousand years old. The sediments beneath them record millions of years before humans existed. The rocks beneath the sediments formed when the ancestors of mammals were small, nocturnal creatures hiding from dinosaurs. The ocean floor has existed in something like its current form for hundreds of millions of years, while human civilization spans only a few thousand. We are newcomers to a very old story. As we near the conclusion of our journey through the mysteries of the ocean floor, we might reflect on what these discoveries mean for our understanding of our place in the universe. The ocean floor shows us that Earth is far stranger and more wonderful than we imagined. It hosts forms of life that challenge our definitions of biology, geological processes that operate on timescales we can barely comprehend, and connections between systems that we are only beginning to understand. The exploration of the ocean floor has taught us humility. Every expedition returns with new discoveries, reminding us how little we know about our own planet. The bizarre creatures of the deep, the unexpected geological features, the complex chemical processes all remind us that nature is more creative than human imagination. The ocean floor is a testament to the fact that reality exceeds fiction, that the universe is stranger and more wonderful than we can imagine. The ocean floor also teaches us about resilience and adaptation. Life has found ways to thrive in the most extreme conditions our planet offers. Organisms have evolved solutions to problems that would seem insurmountable. Communities have persisted through catastrophes that wiped out most life on Earth. This resilience gives hope that life, in some form, will continue regardless of what changes the future brings, whether caused by natural events or human activities. Yet the ocean floor also reminds us of fragility. The unique ecosystems of hydrothermal vents can be destroyed in an instant by changes in volcanic activity. The ancient corals of the deep can be killed by small changes in temperature or chemistry. The slow-growing communities of the abyssal plains can be obliterated by a single pass of a mining dredge. What took millions of years to evolve can be destroyed in moments. This fragility reminds us of our responsibility as stewards of our planet. The ocean floor challenges us to think beyond human timescales and human concerns. The processes operating there, the spreading of the sea floor, the accumulation of sediments, the growth of manganese nodules, operate on timescales that make human history seem like a brief flicker, yet these slow processes shape the world we inhabit. The oxygen we breathe, the climate we depend on, the resources we use, all are influenced by processes operating on the ocean floor. We are part of a much larger story, one that began billions of years before us and will continue billions of years after. In exploring the ocean floor, we are exploring not just a place, but a different way of being. The organisms of the deep have evolved different solutions to the problems of existence. They navigate without light, communicate without sound as we know it, and survive in conditions that would instantly kill surface life. They show us that there are many ways to be alive, many strategies for survival, many forms of success. Their existence expands our conception of what is possible. The ocean floor also represents the ultimate frontier on our own planet, the last great unknown in an age when satellites have mapped every square meter of land surface. While we dream of exploring other worlds, we have barely begun to explore this one. The ocean floor offers all the challenges and rewards of space exploration, the need for sophisticated technology, the encounter with the truly alien, the expansion of human knowledge. But it is right here on Earth. Every dive to the ocean floor is a journey into the unknown, with the potential for discoveries that reshape our understanding of our planet and ourselves. As we return from our imaginary journey to the ocean floor, rising through the layers of water toward the familiar surface, we carry with us images and ideas that will stay with us. The sight of black smokers venting superheated water into the frigid depths, creating oases of chemical energy in the darkness. The vision of brine pools with their underwater shores, where the normal rules of liquid and density are overturned. The knowledge of creatures that live for centuries in the cold darkness, growing with patience we can barely fathom. The understanding that beneath our feet, miles below the ocean surface, entire ecosystems thrive without any connection to sunlight. We have seen mountains that dwarf Everest and valleys that could swallow the Grand Canyon. We have encountered organisms that create their own light, that live without sunlight, that thrive in conditions that would seem to belong to another planet. We have discovered that the ocean floor is not a desert, but a garden, not static but dynamic, not separate from the rest of Earth, but intimately connected to every other system on our planet. The mysteries we have explored, the manganese nodules that shouldn't remain on the surface but do, the dark oxygen that shouldn't exist but does, the sounds whose sources remain unknown, the patterns and processes that we can observe but not fully explain. These are not failures of science, but invitations to wonder. They remind us that the universe is more complex and beautiful than our theories suggest, that there is always more to discover, always more to understand. As you prepare for sleep, let your mind rest on these deep mysteries. Picture the ocean floor continuing its patient work through the night. The slow spreading from the ridges, adding inches over years, miles over millions of years, the gentle rain of marine snow settling through miles of water column. The growth of nodules, atom by atom, layer by layer. Imagine the creatures of the deep going about their ancient business, navigating in perfect darkness, finding food in the apparent desert, reproducing and dying and being recycled into the great cycles of the ocean. Think of the hydrothermal vents with their impossible ecosystems, powered by the Earth itself rather than the sun. Consider the cold seeps with their centuries-old clams and thousand-year-old tube worms, growing with a patience that transcends human understanding. Envision the vast migrations happening at this very moment. billions of creatures rising and falling through the water column in a dance that has continued for millions of years. Let your thoughts drift to the sediments accumulating grain by grain, recording the present moment for future beings we cannot imagine. Think of the chemical reactions occurring in the darkness, maintaining the balance that keeps our planet habitable. Consider the deep biosphere, those communities of microorganisms living in conditions that push the very boundaries of what we consider life, perhaps preserving forms of existence that predate the world we know. All of this continues as you rest. A vast, hidden world, operating according to its own rhythms, its own rules, its own ancient wisdom. The ocean floor does not sleep. It continues its work of building and destroying, of creating and recycling, of preserving and transforming. It maintains its mysteries not to frustrate us, but to inspire us, to remind us that we live on a planet that is still wild, still unknown, still capable of surprise. The ocean floor asks nothing of you tonight except perhaps a moment of wonder, a recognition of mystery, an acceptance that the unknown is not threatening, but beautiful. It offers you its peace, the peace of great depths, where pressure becomes a constant embrace, of vast time where urgency has no meaning, of processes that proceed without haste because they have millions of years to unfold. This is the gift of the ocean floor. The knowledge that beneath the troubled surface of our world, beneath the waves and storms of daily life, there exists a realm of profound calm and ancient patience. Sleep now, and dream perhaps of underwater mountains and valleys, of creatures lit by their own light, of stones that travel through centuries, of waters that remember the beginning of the world. Dream of mysteries that need no solution, of wonders that need no explanation, of a planet that still holds infinite surprises for those who dare to look. The ocean floor continues its eternal story, and you, in your rest, become part of that story, connected through water and minerals and time to the great mysteries that make our Earth a living world of endless wonder. In the morning, the mysteries will remain, patient as always, waiting in the darkness below the waves. But tonight, let them bring you peace, these profound anomalies of the ocean floor, these reminders that reality exceeds imagination, that nature surpasses art, that the universe contains wonders beyond counting. Rest in this knowledge, sleep in this comfort, dream in this mystery. The ocean floor keeps its secrets and shares its peace, offering both to all who are willing to descend, in body or imagination, into its profound and beautiful darkness. Where time moves like honey, and the earth dreams its longest dreams, where life finds impossible ways to thrive, and where our planet reveals its deepest truths to those patient enough to listen to stories written in stone and sediment, in chemistry and biology, in the slow dance of continents and the patient accumulation of moments that become millennia, that become millions of years, that become the deep time in which the Earth's real story unfolds.